Chosen one, God will not help you. Until you finally obey what he commanded, you have cried out for help, begged for intervention, and wondered why heaven remains silent. But the truth is unnerving. God is not ignoring you. He has already spoken. The reason you feel stuck, overlooked, or abandoned is not because he has forgotten you, but because you have not yet obeyed what he already told you to do. You say you're waiting on God, but in reality, God is waiting on you. The power to change your life has been within you since the beginning, encoded in the command whispered into your soul long ago. But until you act on that divine instruction, until your inner world aligns completely with what you've been called to become, nothing will move. This is not punishment, it is law. God will not assist disobedience, for to do so would violate the order of spirit. He helps the obedient, not the hesitant, and the moment you truly surrender to what he has commanded, you will see what has been waiting for you all along. Obedience is the activation of power. You must understand this spiritual truth, chosen one. Nothing of God's power moves on your behalf until obedience becomes your foundation. You can fast, you can pray, you can cry, and you can quote scriptures endlessly, but if you continue to resist what he has inwardly commanded you to do, then you will only exhaust yourself spiritually while remaining unchanged. Power is never absent. It is simply inactive when disobedience is present. God does not withhold help out of cruelty, but because his assistance is bound by divine order. He cannot violate his own nature, and his nature responds only to agreement, not resistance. To obey is not simply to act in the natural. It is to align your consciousness, your belief, your imagination, and your speech with what God has already decreed within you. That command may have come as a whisper, as a recurring conviction, as a divine unrest that will not let you go. You've felt it for months, perhaps years. You've known what he required of you, and yet you've paused, doubted, postponed, or reasoned your way out of it. But spiritual law cannot be tricked. As long as you delay obedience, you delay the flow of divine help. You wait for confirmation while God waits for compliance. You hope for a breakthrough while ignoring the very instruction that unlocks it. Obedience is the spiritual signal that tells the unseen realm you are ready. Until that signal is sent from within, nothing will come forth without. You must awaken to the fact that obedience is not performance, it is alignment. You can do many right things outwardly and still be out of position inwardly. You can serve, give, attend, and even speak with spiritual vocabulary and still be living in contradiction to the command of God in your heart. That command may not have come with thunder, but it came with clarity. It told you to leave that place, to forgive that person, to walk by faith and not sight, to begin again, to act as if the thing is already done. And yet you waited. You said you needed more signs, but in the realm of spirit, signs follow obedience. They do not precede it. The moment you inwardly obey, the outer world begins to shift. God does not respond to mere effort. He responds to alignment. When you obey what he has commanded, you become a vessel ready to receive divine flow. The problem is not that he won't help. The truth is you have been resisting help on the terms he provided it, and the terms are always obedience. Look closely, and you'll realize that many of the delays in your life are not divine resistance. They are divine restraint. God's love restrains the manifestation of blessing when your inner state is not ready to steward it. Why give you the harvest when you have not yet plowed the field he told you to prepare? Why bless a house he told you to leave? Why give clarity on the next step when you ignored the last instruction? You call it confusion, but it is disobedience. You call it a test, but it is a consequence of misalignment. The truth is, your next level is not waiting on God, it's waiting on your obedience. You've asked for more anointing, more clarity, more opportunity, but have you followed what you already heard? Until you move in obedience, you block the very thing you keep praying for. The command must be obeyed for the power to be released. No obedience, no activation. This is the eternal law of spirit, and do not mistake God's silence as absence. Sometimes heaven goes quiet because it already spoke. The silence is not punishment. It's a sign that the next move is yours. The ball is in your court. God will not repeat himself when the last word was clear. He will not send another confirmation when his instruction has already been given. Obedience is not waiting for a louder voice. It is moving at the sound of the still, small whisper. Your delay is not neutral. It is resistance, and resistance delays manifestation. Do not confuse prolonged preparation with procrastination. There comes a moment when faith must move, when belief must act, when the command must be fulfilled. That moment is now. The very thing you fear doing is the door to the power you've been asking God to release. Chosen one, your help is on the other side of your obedience. Your breakthrough has been waiting, not forming. Your next dimension has been prepared, but it cannot be accessed by the disobedient. Until you surrender your will, your preferences, your opinions, and your conditions, God's power remains inactive in your life. He is not being harsh. He is being holy. He is not being silent. He is being consistent. He will not help you violate the very law he established. That power flows where obedience lives. The heavens respond not to desperation, but to divine agreement. Obedience is not the price, it is the key. Your willingness to obey, especially when it's hard, activates what nothing else can. Prayer is potent when it is married to obedience. Worship is powerful when it flows from surrender. But without obedience, even spiritual disciplines become mere routines. Ask yourself, what did God already tell me that I haven't done? What instruction have I conveniently ignored? What decision have I delayed, though I know it's divine? What conversation have I avoided, though it's required? What vision have I buried, even though it keeps resurrecting inside of me? These are not minor things. They are the very keys to your next move. God will not help you bypass the command. He will not assist you in rebellion. He will not make disobedience successful. The faster you obey, the sooner you experience what he has already prepared for you. Delay serves no purpose but to prolong your wilderness. Obedience leads directly into your promised land. Let today be the moment you stop asking God to do what only your obedience can unlock. Let today be the day you admit that you have heard enough, and now it's time to do. Your power, your peace, your provision, and your purpose are all waiting on the other side of your surrender. Obedience is not loss, it is liberation. It is the spiritual alignment that activates everything you were born to receive. So obey, not because you're afraid, not because you're desperate, but because you finally realize that God has never withheld anything from you. He has only waited for you to trust him enough to do what he said. Delay is not denial. Let's disobedience many cry out in frustration, wondering why the promises of God seem delayed, why prayers appear unanswered, why years have passed and the vision still tarries. But here is the hard truth that few want to face. Most of the delay you're experiencing is not divine denial. It is the consequence of quiet, consistent disobedience. You assume that God is saying not yet. But what if he already said go? What if the delay is not in heaven but in your own heart, in your hesitation, your reasoning, your unwillingness to move when God already gave the green light? You pray for timing, but timing is not the issue, obedience is. Divine help is always in motion for those who are in alignment. But when you delay what God commanded, you interrupt the flow. You stop what was already being orchestrated on your behalf. You ask, why is this taking so long? Yet the better question is, what have I ignored that's already been said? The blessing is not late. You are. You are late in trust, late in surrender, late in action, and your lateness has been dressed up as patience, but in truth it is disobedience wearing a holy mask. The spiritual realm doesn't operate according to excuses. It operates by laws. One of the most unshakable laws is this: what you do with the instruction determines what you experience from the promise. The word cannot return void, but it also cannot override your rebellion. Every divine promise is tied to a divine instruction, and when that instruction is resisted, the promise appears delayed, but it's not God who moved. It's you who refused to move with him. The command was not a suggestion. It was the unlocking code to everything you've been praying for. You beg for God's will, but then argue when it contradicts your comfort. You want new seasons without shedding old habits. You want supernatural blessings while keeping natural control. But this is not how spiritual law operates. You must die to your timeline, your methods, your opinions, and fully obey what was already whispered into your soul. Until then, you will confuse self-inflicted delay for God's supposed denial. But God did not say no. You said not now, and that delay cost you. It's not that God won't bless you. It's that he won't bless your disobedience. If he did, he would be endorsing rebellion, and a holy God cannot empower what defies his word. This is why you've seen doors close, relationships fall apart, opportunities pass by, because the blessing was scheduled for the version of you that obeyed, not the one that negotiated. Delay is the space between what you heard and what you did. The longer you wait to obey, the longer the spiritual clock stays paused. God moves at the speed of obedience, not the speed of emotion, not the speed of logic. The speed of obedience, and the moment you fully surrender, you'll realize the delay was never a denial, it was a warning. Stop waiting for another sign and start doing what you were told. Divine timing is not a waiting game, it is a synchronization of spirit and instruction. The moment you align, manifestation is inevitable, and make no mistake, God's silence in your delay is not indifference, it is protection. He will not bless what will break you. He will not give you the next step when you refused the first. It may feel like he is being distant, but he is being faithful. He knows the damage of giving you something too soon when your character hasn't caught up to your calling. That's why the delay lingers, because the instruction still waits for your yes. You can't fast it away. You can't pray it into another shape. You can't wish it into a different form. The only key is obedience, and obedience begins in the heart before it ever becomes an action. It is the spiritual shift that says, I trust your way over mine even when I don't understand it. Most people delay obedience because they fear loss. They think if they obey, they'll lose comfort, control, security, or familiarity. But what you lose in obedience is never greater than what you gain. What seems like loss is always an upgrade in disguise. Chosen one, you must stop treating divine instruction like a negotiable option. It is the path, the only path, to your promised outcome. You've waited long enough. You've circled the same mountain, sat in the same frustration, lived under the same ceiling, not because God won't move, but because you won't. He already moved when he gave you the command, and he will not move again until you meet him there. That is the pivot point of power. That is where delay ends and destiny begins. God's plan for you is intact. His vision for your life is not diminished, but his help is activated by alignment. You can't expect a miracle while ignoring the method he prescribed. He said forgive. He said go. He said stay. He said create. He said release. He said believe. He said act. But you hesitated, and now you call it waiting on God, when in truth heaven has been waiting on you. Your life changes the moment you stop arguing with what you know is right. Obedience is never convenient. It often comes wrapped in discomfort, but it carries the seed of everything you desire. Obedience is the bridge between the vision and the fulfillment. The longer you stand at the edge of that bridge, the more time you waste in spiritual limbo. Your destiny has not been denied. Your prayer has not been rejected, but your refusal to walk in faith has locked the gate to your breakthrough. The delay has nothing to do with God's power and everything to do with your posture. Obedience isn't about perfection, it's about movement. It's about saying, yes, Lord, even when your mind doesn't fully understand, because your spirit knows what's required. Look around at your life. What if the very breakthrough you've begged for is being blocked by one simple act of disobedience? What if the healing, the provision, the opportunity, the relationship, or the elevation you seek is already complete in the spirit, but waiting on your earthly compliance to appear? You can't rebuke delay when it's rooted in your own hesitation. You can't cast out what you've invited by ignoring instruction. Delay ends where obedience begins, and the moment you do what he said, even if it's uncomfortable, unpopular, or costly, that moment the floodgates open. Not because God finally helped you, but because you finally aligned with the help that was always present. So stop calling it divine timing when it's actually disobedience in disguise. God has already declared the time. And the time is now. There is no more need for waiting, wondering, or wavering. The door will open the second you stop negotiating and start obeying. Delay is not a spiritual virtue. It is a sign the command is felt, not always heard. Chosen one, the voice of God is not always a roar. It is often a whisper. You expect to hear thunder from the sky, an unmistakable declaration, a dramatic signal that leaves no room for doubt. But that is not how Spirit speaks to those who walk by faith. The command of God is rarely audible, yet it is undeniably real. It is not always spoken in words, but it is always felt, deep in the fibers of your being, in the atmosphere of your soul. You call it a hunch, an inner knowing, a conviction that won't let you go, but it is the command. It is the divine instruction wrapped in silence, cloaked in stillness, waiting for you to trust what you feel over what you see. This is why so many miss their moment. They're waiting for a loud voice when God already gave a clear impression. They want a sign in the sky, but he sent a pull in the heart. The command is subtle, but it is strong. And if you ignore it long enough, you'll become numb to the very direction that was meant to deliver you. God does not need to shout because his authority does not come from volume, it comes from truth. That gentle yet persistent feeling within you, the idea you can't shake, the dream that keeps coming back, the inner pressure to move, to act, to believe, to shift, that's the command. And obedience begins the moment you stop demanding it make sense to your mind and start honoring what resonates in your spirit. It is not logic that recognizes God's voice. It is faith. Faith knows when God has spoken, even when no one else heard it. Faith doesn't need confirmation from the outside. It recognizes alignment on the inside, and here lies the secret. God trains his chosen ones to follow the feeling of truth, not the sound of words. He trains you to recognize his fingerprints, not just his voice. That is why others may not understand what you're doing. They didn't feel what you felt. They weren't present for the encounter you had in silence. They didn't wrestle with the call that woke you up in the middle of the night. But you did, you know, and that knowing is the command. The longer you wait for a louder instruction, the longer you delay your destiny. The command was never missing. You just didn't trust that feeling. That sense of urgency to leave, the holy discomfort in a place you used to love, the restless stirring to begin something new, the divine dissatisfaction with your current condition, these are not random emotions. They are sacred signals. They are God's way of shifting you without explaining everything in advance. He speaks to the heart before he confirms in the world. The command is spiritual, not sensational. That's why you must train yourself to listen beyond your ears. You must feel your way forward in faith. Every major move of God in your life will begin with an unseen inner prompting. It is not usually validated until after you obey it. This is the test. Can you trust what you felt was God, even when it contradicts what you see in the natural? The command is often inconvenient. It rarely comes when you're fully ready. It almost always challenges your comfort and questions your logic. But it keeps returning, it keeps pressing, it keeps visiting your thoughts when you least expect it. It comes in patterns, it shows up in dreams, in repeated scriptures, in conversations that echo what you already felt. The command isn't always spoken, but it is always repeated in new ways until you finally yield, and once you recognize that frequency, once you train your inner ear to honor that invisible instruction, you will never be confused again. The confusion was never about God's voice. It was about your willingness to trust what you already sense to be true. Spirit doesn't argue, it just nudges, it doesn't overwhelm, it quietly insists. And if you ignore it, you'll feel lost. Not because God left you, but because you drifted from the command that was designed to guide you. Chosen one, stop asking for something louder. Start honoring what is already clear. You've asked for confirmation, but the moment you felt that deep peace about the decision, that was confirmation. The moment your soul lit up at the thought, that was guidance. The moment you felt sick staying in the same place, that was direction. The moment you felt compelled to act even without a plan, that was the command. It was never about the voice, it was about the vibration. God speaks in frequencies, and only those who walk in faith can hear them. This is why so many people are stuck. They dismissed the soft instruction and waited for a dramatic moment. But obedience to the whisper is what prepares you for the roar. Until you honor the command as it comes, in silence, in stillness, in subtlety, you will delay what has already been assigned to you. The command is not a suggestion. It is divine order filtered through grace. It doesn't always explain itself. It doesn't always make sense in the moment, but it makes alignment possible. It leads you away from what is familiar into what is faithful. It may ask you to walk away without knowing where you're going. It may require you to invest when you're not sure of the return. It may lead you to let go before you have something new in your hands. But obedience is never about the guarantee, it's about the God behind the instruction. When you move in faith, heaven responds in full, but that movement must begin in your soul. It must begin when you say, I don't fully understand, but I trust what I felt. I trust that God spoke even when the world was silent. That's when obedience is real. That's when miracles start forming. Never underestimate the power of a holy impression. The world tells you to follow logic, but God leads you through revelation. The world says to wait until all the facts are in, but the Spirit says move while it's still dark. You are not here to follow formulas. You are here to follow faith. You are not here to obey only what's obvious. You are here to respond to what's sacred. The command will keep visiting you until you either obey or grow numb. If you ignore it long enough, your heart will harden, your ears will dull, and your life will plateau. But if you act on it, if you respond to what you felt, what you dreamed, what you knew but tried to forget, everything shifts. The provision is already prepared. The next step is already aligned. The doors are already swinging open. But none of it can reach you until you obey what was whispered. So stop waiting for the voice to be louder. Start training yourself to respond quicker. Don't wait for clarity the world can validate. Move when your spirit says go. Obey the stirring. Trust the prompting. Lean into the discomfort that signals transition. That's the command. That's the instruction. That's the call you've been pretending not to hear because it challenges your safety. But chosen one, your safety is not your destiny. Your purpose lives in the place where you fully surrender to what you feel. When what you feel is infused with God's presence, you don't need to hear it out loud. You already know. Now go do what you were told. Miracles obey the inner LEW. Miracles are not random events, chosen one. They are not scattered like confetti from heaven, falling on the lucky while skipping over the overlooked. No, miracles are precise, mathematical, lawful. They respond not to pleading or panic, but to spiritual alignment with divine law. Every miracle you seek, healing, breakthrough, provision, restoration, is already finished in the unseen realm. It is not waiting for God to make it. It is waiting for you to match it. The manifestation you long for will never respond to emotion, only to obedience to inner law. And what is this law? It is the truth that the outer world is forever shaped by your inner state. Your circumstances will always mirror your consciousness. If you feel lack, live in fear, dwell in resentment, or think from unworthiness, you cannot birth a miracle, because miracles cannot dwell in contradiction. They are the natural fruit of spiritual alignment. You do not get what you pray for with your lips. You get what you accept with your heart. When your internal world agrees with the truth of God's command, the external must follow. It has no choice. The law is unbreakable. You were not designed to chase miracles. You were created to generate them through harmony with divine instruction. And yet, the reason so many remain stuck is because they violate the inner law while begging for outer change. They cry out for breakthrough but hold tightly to doubt. They say they trust God but refuse to move when He speaks. They affirm the promise but nurture the fear. But the law does not honor contradiction. It does not listen to confusion. It only obeys truth. That is why the most powerful shifts in your life will not happen when you beg louder. They will happen when you believe deeper. You do not need more noise. You need alignment. Miracles meet you where your thoughts and actions reflect the inner reality of faith, and that alignment always starts with obedience to the divine prompting inside you. Until you yield to that completely, unflinchingly, your miracle stays trapped in potential. Not because God is withholding it, but because your inner world is not fit to carry it. Understand this clearly. Miracles are the byproduct of spiritual law fulfilled. They are not interruptions of nature. They are the highest expression of it. To the carnal mind, miracles look like exceptions. To the awakened soul, they are the expected outcome of living in obedience to the word spoken within. When you think rightly, feel truthfully, walk obediently, and believe boldly, The natural world cannot resist reflecting that power. That is the essence of miracle, working faith. It is not passive, it is not timid, it is not waiting on permission from the world. It is divine agreement in motion, but this only happens when you stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start surrendering to the laws that govern them. The command is the seed, obedience is the planting, inner agreement is the water, and manifestation is the inevitable harvest. You cannot circuit this, you cannot bribe heaven, you cannot bypass the process. The inner law cannot be tricked, only obeyed. Your miracle, chosen one, is not delayed because God is slow. It is delayed because your inner environment is still resisting the law. You may be saying, I believe, but your actions whisper, I'm afraid. You may be shouting affirmations, but your attitude contradicts them in silence. The law does not respond to words. It responds to alignment. You must think in harmony with the end you desire. You must feel as though it is already done. You must act as though it is already yours, not because you're faking it, but because you trust the law more than you trust appearances. That trust, unshaken, immovable, saturated in surrender, is what pulls miracles out of the invisible into the visible. Your miracle is waiting for your obedience to agree with what is already settled in heaven. This is why God cannot move in your life the way you desire until your internal obedience matches your external request. If you want miracles, you must become the version of yourself that lives in the reality of that miracle already. Miracles do not come to make you believe. They come to those who already believe. They do not appear to convince you. They appear because you are convinced. And conviction is more than emotion. It is rooted in law. Think of gravity. It doesn't care how you feel. It works because it is consistent. Likewise, miracles operate by the unbreakable consistency of spiritual law. Once you come into agreement with that law, once you stop treating obedience as optional and start treating it as the currency of heaven, everything changes. Miracles are not made, they are unlocked. The moment you adjust your inner world to reflect obedience, complete, fearless, joyful obedience, you begin to see doors open without effort, people show up at the right time, resources find their way to you. Paths are made straight that were once blocked. Why? Because you're no longer at odds with the law, you are flowing with it. And when you flow with divine law, miracles become natural. You don't have to force what flows. You don't have to chase what is drawn to your frequency. That's why you must stop blaming God for the delay and start examining your own resistance. Where have you refused to forgive? Where have you ignored the command to let go, to act, to move, to trust? These are not small things. They are the very hinges on which the door of your miracle swings. Do not say, God didn't answer. Say instead, I have not yet obeyed fully. That's where the power is. That's where the shift begins. Every miracle recorded in Scripture was preceded by an act of obedience. Stretch forth your hand. Go wash in the pool. Take up your bed and walk. Pour the water. Roll away the stone. These commands may have seemed unnecessary, even strange, but they were spiritual laws in disguise, and every time someone obeyed without question, without logic, without needing full understanding, the miracle followed without delay. Your miracle is no different. The law hasn't changed, the spirit hasn't weakened, but your alignment determines the outcome. You don't need to chase blessings, you need to become the kind of soul they are magnetized to. Chosen one, this is your moment to shift. No more hoping without obeying, no more praying while resisting, no more affirmations with no inner agreement. It is time to bring your heart, your thoughts, your will, and your habits into full submission to the command you already know. The command that lives inside you, the command that you've heard in the silence and felt in your spirit. It is time to walk in obedience, not because you want the miracle, but because you trust the law. And when you trust the law, miracles cannot help but obey. They are the reward of the aligned, the natural result of spiritual obedience. They are not rare. They are right there, waiting for the internal shift that unlocks them. So don't ask for the miracle, become it. Don't chase signs, obey the signal already within you. That's how heaven moves. That's how laws are fulfilled. That's how the impossible bows before the obedient. Your miracle is not in the God withdraws until you obey. There comes a time, chosen one, when the silence of God is not his absence but his strategy. A sacred quietness falls over your life, not because he has left you, but because you have not yet obeyed what he already spoke. He gave you the instruction, and now he waits. He revealed the vision, and now he withdraws his voice, not to punish, but to press you into obedience. You cry out, Lord, speak again, but heaven has already spoken. You fast, you plead, you ask for signs, but God is not in repetition. He's not obligated to repeat himself to the disobedient. He's waiting for you to act on the last word. Until you do, there will be no new word, no fresh wind, no greater anointing. God withdraws not because he is far, but because he is holy, and holiness demands obedience. He will not empower what you refuse to execute. He will not anoint rebellion, and he will not give fresh oil to a vessel still clogged with fear, delay, and excuses. You must understand this. Heaven does not operate on your timeline. It operates on your trust, and trust is proven through obedience. You are not waiting on God. He is waiting on you, waiting for you to do what he already whispered into your heart when you were still, when you were broken, when you were searching. That command, the one you keep pushing aside, reasoning away, minimizing, is the very key to the break through you beg for. And the longer you delay, the more the heavens feel closed, not because God has turned his back, but because he's turned the spotlight back onto your responsibility. You say you love him, but love is shown in doing. You say you trust him, but trust is proven in surrender. And until your actions match your declarations, his presence remains veiled, not out of cruelty, but to provoke maturity. This is the part of the journey no one preaches about, the holy withdrawal. When God seemingly vanishes from your prayers, when the worship feels dry, when the miracles stop flowing, not because the promise is void, but because you have not fulfilled the condition, you cannot disobey and expect divine flow. You cannot disregard his whisper and expect public wonders. God tests his chosen not with storms alone, but with silence. The silence reveals your heart. Will you still obey when the feeling fades? Will you still act when the reward is hidden? Will you still say yes when there is no confirmation, no applause, no spotlight? That's where obedience is proven, not in the emotional high, but in the spiritual stillness. The withdrawal is not rejection, it's refinement. It strips you of shallow motives. It purifies your faith. It forces you to confront the truth. Obedience must become your default, not your option. Chosen one, remember, God doesn't speak to entertain your curiosity. He speaks to align your life. When he gave you the command, it wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a teaser. It was divine instruction with a window attached, and the longer you delay, the more the window narrows. His withdrawal is mercy in disguise. It keeps you from becoming addicted to spiritual noise while remaining barren in action. It stops you from becoming a hearer only. It challenges you to walk, not just weep. God's silence after the command is the signal. You already have what you need to proceed. He will not say more until you move, and once you move, the next layer of guidance unlocks. But obedience is the passcode. Without it, the spiritual system stays locked, frustrating you, not because it's broken, but because you're out of sync. This is why the chosen often feel abandoned when they are really being advanced. The silence is not desertion, it's direction. It's heaven saying, I trust you enough not to babysit your faith. God withdraws his manifest presence to draw out your inner power. He hides to train you to walk by truth, not by sight. He goes quiet to provoke action. And if you resist that silence, you'll mistake the delay as denial. But it's not denial, it's discipline. It's the Father saying, when you do what I already told you, the next move will meet you. Until then, don't expect emotional affirmation. Don't wait for another sign. The miracle is frozen in place by your own hesitation. The cloud is waiting to move, but you're still camped in yesterday's command, and here lies the mystery. Sometimes the silence of God is the clearest sign of what you must do. It means the answer is already inside you. It means the vision has already been planted. It means the door will open the moment your foot moves. But if you let fear keep you paralyzed, don't blame heaven for feeling distant. God didn't change. You stopped following. You paused when you should have progressed. And now you feel stuck, not because the way is blocked, but because the instruction is being ignored. Don't pray for new revelation. Pray for the courage to obey what you already know. That is where the breakthrough is. That is where the anointing flows. That is where God reappears. Not before obedience, but through it. You see, God never leaves, but he does conceal. He hides himself to train your ears, to develop your discernment, to shift you from dependency on emotional highs to deep, unwavering trust. The silence stretches your spiritual muscles. It teaches you to move based on conviction, not convenience. And if you embrace the withdrawal, not as punishment, but as promotion, you will discover that what feels like distance is actually design. God is making you into someone who can walk in power without constant prompting. Someone who acts because of faith, not feelings. Someone who obeys instantly, not eventually. That's maturity. And that maturity is what unlocks the next level of glory, of favor, of miracles. So, chosen one, if you feel the withdrawal, if heaven seems silent, ask yourself this one holy question. What was the last thing God told me to do? Go back to it, dig it up, sit with it, then do it. Do it with trembling hand. Do it without full understanding. Do it even if no one claps. Do it even if no one sees. Your obedience is the invitation for God to move again. The moment you act, the silence breaks, the winds return. The presence floods your soul like it never left, because it never did. It was always waiting, watching, searching for obedience. That's what heaven responds to. That's what moves the Spirit. That's what opens the gates of favor. God will not fight your will. He will not argue with your disobedience, but he will withdraw until obedience becomes your response. That's how he trains warriors, not watchers. That's how he raises generals, not spectators. He withdraws to reveal what's truly in you. So if the voice is quiet, if the fire feels low, if the heavens seem still, remember this: the command was already given. Now walk in it. For until you do, God will wait in silence, not because he left, but because he's calling you forward. Not into noise, but into action. Distance, it's within reach, on the other side of total surrender.